Hi, it's Victor Kim, minister here at Richmond Presbyterian Church, and welcome to our midweek meditation. It's good to be with you for this week's meditation. It's still early enough in the new year that some of us might still be considering what sort of resolutions that we could be making for 2022, how we might live a little bit differently this year. Did you make a resolution this year? I know that these are difficult times to be making resolutions, to be thinking about things like New Year's resolutions, especially given all that's happening in our world. Maybe our resolution this year is just to stay healthy or to remain engaged and optimistic and not sort of tune out. I'm not really a big resolution kind of person. I've failed way too many times in the past. But let me give you one suggestion, one idea that we might think about this year. The gospel reading, if you've been following the lectionary, is the wedding feast in Cana of Galilee this past Sunday. Most of us may have heard about this story, right? There's a wedding in this place called Cana in Galilee, and Jesus and his disciples are invited to attend this wedding. It's pretty ordinary so far, but if you know anything about Jesus, you know that there's really never anything ordinary about anywhere that Jesus shows up. And you just know that this isn't going to be just any old kind of wedding. By the way, I once read that 2/3 of women continue to wear the same fragrance that they wore on their wedding day. So some of you women are thinking, is that right for me? Is that true for me? Am I still wearing the same fragrance that I wore on my wedding day? And most of you men who might be watching this are probably pretty clueless about this. And you're thinking, do I even know the name of the fragrance that my wife or my partner is wearing? And is it the same one from our wedding day? But back to Jesus and the wedding in Cana. Not only was Jesus there, but his mother was there as well. And it makes sense. I mean, these weddings are family events, and families would have been invited together. And these were small towns where probably the entire town was invited to celebrate this union. But then the unthinkable happened. They ran out of wine. The bar closed. It's a travesty. It's a travesty. So much so that Jesus' mother comes to him and says, "Hey, Jesus, they've run out of wine." I mean, what was she expecting her son to do about it? And Jesus gets pretty annoyed by this too, and says, "Look, my time's not come. How is this any of my business?" And yet, because he is a dutiful son, he honors his mother. And he gets the servants to bring over these big stone jars that were used for the Jewish rite of purification, right? It's to wash. You have to wash your body. And each of these jars held between 20 to 30 gallons of water. It's a lot. It's a lot. And then these jars were filled to the brim with water. And then Jesus changes this water into wine. And it's not just any old wine, right? It's not just some $10 bottle of wine that you get at the liquor store. This is the best wine, so much so that the master of ceremonies calls the groom aside and says, "Hey, you saved the best wine until the very end." Pretty good. Now, there's a lot that could be said about this story, and a lot has been. But I want to just focus on one thing today, and that is 6 large jars holding like 30 gallons of water each. That's how much water Jesus changed into wine. Let's say 180 gallons of wine. And that's a lot of wine, isn't it? 180 gallons of wine. That's a lot of wine. It's more wine than any wedding feast could manage. So how come so much? Why so much? And I think it's because the focus of the story really isn't about churning the water into wine. In fact, if you read the gospel, John never tells us how this happened. The focus of the story is on Jesus. The point being that Jesus' response to the wine running out was to offer more wine than could possibly be consumed, and the best wine. And in the same way, the response of God to our need in the gift of Jesus is more grace than possibly could be needed, and the best grace. It's a generosity beyond proportion, a generosity beyond proportion. I think that most of us are pretty okay with the idea of meritocracy. Meritocracy, right? It's a word that means that people should be valued on their merits, on their worth, not because of any accident of birth that I just happened to be born into such and such a family. I mean, I want my doctor to have earned her medical degree, not inherited it, right? People should be judged on their merits by and large. But the problem occurs when we take this sense of meritocracy to the extreme and start judging the nature of a person by what they do rather than who they are. I mean, is the CEO of a large multinational company worth more than an entry-level clerk in that same company? I mean, if we measured the value that they add to the company, sure, the CEO would be worth more. But in terms of their worth as a human being, no. In terms of our worth as human beings, whether you're a comfortable retiree or an impoverished refugee, whether you're an out-of-work homeless man or a professional working mother, all life, every life has equal value in God's eyes, because all of us, every one of us, is created in God's image. And it is for all of us, each one of us, that God sent Jesus Christ. The idea of grace is never about what we deserve. It's always about what we don't deserve. It's about what God desires to give us. When the wedding master of ceremonies tastes the wine that Jesus had changed from the water, he pulls the groom aside, right? And he says this, hey, most people, they serve the best wine first. And then once people have had a little too much and they can't tell the difference, they bring out the cheap stuff. But you've saved the best wine until the end. Until the end, you've saved it, the best for last. Our nature is to be frugal, right? It's to save, it's to withhold. But God's nature is to be generous. It's to be lavish, lavishly generous. We only need to look to Jesus to know that truth, don't we? So here's the thought. How generous are we? How generous are you with your grace? Is it just enough to cover what's necessary? Are we frugal with our grace, only dispensing it in the amount and to the person who is worthy of it? It's not really grace, though, if it's deserved, is it? It's not grace if it's deserved. What if we were lavish with our grace, both the amount and to the person, into the situations in which we exercise this grace? And I wonder about 180 gallons of wine. 180 gallons of wine. They probably couldn't have finished it at the wedding feast, but I can tell you that it wouldn't have been wasted. Even though they wouldn't have finished it at the wedding, it would never have gone to waste. The rest of the wine would have gone to good use. Maybe not at that moment, but someone would have made good use of it. And so it is with grace. So it is with grace. If we live as a gracious people, generous and lavish in our grace, if we live with a willingness to forgive, to love, to be compassionate, kind, gentle, gracious, even more than we need to be, way beyond what the situation might call us to be, I don't think that our grace will ever be wasted, right? Someone's going to benefit from it. Someone's going to benefit from it, sometimes whether we know it or not. The truth is that there's never enough grace in this world to go around. And maybe that's never been truer any more than it is now. There's always the need for more grace. If you've received that grace, if you've received that grace in your life through the gift of Jesus Christ and his love, consider passing it on. Consider passing it on, sharing it generously with others this year. We didn't earn the grace we received. We didn't earn it. So may we give it away in the same spirit with which it was given and blessed to us. Just a thought for this year. I invite you now to listen to the gift of this musical offering, a gift of grace from our music director, Jannie Burdeti, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a wonderful week. God bless.